viewers, welcome to CEC lectures. Myself Dr. Preeti Jagwani from Department of Computer Science, Aryabhatta College, University of Delhi. So in our previous lecture we were looking at the mechanism mechanism adopted for handling the deadlocks, and we have seen two methods or two techniques how to prevent the deadlock. So let us begin with that particular topic only. Let us resume with that particular topic only, and let us proceed further. So in order to prevent the deadlock, we need to ensure that at least one of those four necessary conditions should not hold. These four necessary conditions are mutual exclusion, hold and wait, no preemption, and circular wait. So mutual exclusion, we have seen in quite detail that this condition must hold for non-shareable resources. We cannot prevent the deadlocks just by denying the mutual exclusion conditions, because some resources will intrinsically be in the kind of non-shareable mode. All the resources in a system cannot be in a shareable mode. So we cannot prevent the deadlocks by kind of stopping the mutual exclusion condition. The second condition, which was about hold and wait, that condition we were going through, and in order to ensure that hold and wait condition never occurs in the system, we must guarantee that whenever a process requests a resource, it does not hold any other resource. Now how it is going to happen that whenever a process requests a resource, it does not hold any other? This can be kind of implemented with the help of two mechanisms or two protocols, we can say. One protocol ensures that a process needs to request the resource, and it will be allocated all the resources before it begins the execution. That means the execution has not started. Before that, the request has been given all the resources which it has requested, so that it needs not to hold its processing and wait for some resources, because we are going to prevent this hold and wait condition. Another protocol, which is kind of, we can say, an alternative protocol, it allows a process to request resources only when it has none. So a process may request some resources and use them, and before it can request any other additional resources, it needs to release all the resources that it is currently handling. Now what will be the effect of these two protocols? Before going into the effect, let us try to understand this situation with the help of an example. Let's say we have a process which is taking some data from a DVD drive onto to a file on the disk, then it is doing some processing, it does some processing on the file, and then prints the results to a printer. Now what kind of resources it is looking for, what all resources this process or this whole application will look for? So one is your DVD drive, then we have some files on the disk, and then we have some printer. So one protocol says that all the resources must be requested before the execution of the process begins. Then the process must initially request all these three resources which I have just explained: the DVD drive, the disk file, and the printer as well. Now what will happen in this situation? As per the processing flow, the printer is required at the end, because the DVD, the process is all about copying the data from DVD drive to a file onto the disk, sorts the file, and then prints the result to a printer. But if before the execution we are or the system is going to give all the resources which are DVD drive, disk file, and printer, the process will be holding the printer for its entire execution, even though it needs the printer only at the end of its execution. The second method or the second protocol which we have seen, that allows the process to request initially only when the DVD drive and disk file, these two resources will be allowed to request initially, and the printer will be assigned only when it is going to release the DVD drive and the disk. So initially it will be given, the process will be given the DVD drive and the disk file. It copies from the DVD drive to the disk, and then it releases both the resources, and then again it will request for the disk file and the printer, and after copying the disk file to the printer, it releases the two resources and then terminates. So that means the first protocol, or one protocol, says you handle all the you provide all the resources to the request before the execution begins, and second says you do it in the stages, and whenever the resources taken at the first stage will be released, then only the resources which are required at the second stage will be allotted. Both these two protocols, if we can see, have their own disadvantages. The two main disadvantages which come with these two protocols is, the first is resource utilization is going to be very low, because the resources will be allocated and unused for a long period. So as we have seen in the protocol, that printer is given to the process initially and it is being used at the end. So that means resource utilization is low, resources are being we can say hold for long, unused for a long period. And the second disadvantage which is possible is the convoy effect, or we can say starvation. That means a process that needs several resources may have to wait indefinitely, because in list of the several resources which are required by the which are required by the process, at least one of the resource that it needs is always allocated to some other process. So that means we can say a resource hungry process which needs a lot of popular resources will need to wait indefinitely, because at least one of the resources which it requires is not available and it is allocated to some other process. Now with this hold and wait condition, along with its two protocols with the disadvantages which we have seen, let us come to the third condition, which was about the no preemption. No preemption says no preemption of resources that have already been allocated, and we want to ensure that this condition does not hold. Now how are we going to ensure the no preemption of resources which have been already allocated? This will also happen with the help of a protocol. And what is that protocol? The protocol says if a process is holding some resources and request another resources that cannot be immediately allocated to it, that is, the process needs to wait, then all the resources the process is currently holding are preempted. That means, for example, there is a process, let's say P1, it is holding, it is having two resources R1 and R2, and now it looks for the third resource which is R3, and R3 is not available. Why it is not available? Because it is it is busy with the resource is busy with some other process. That means the resource R3 cannot be immediately allocated to the process P1. So then there is no point of making R1 and R2 allocated with the process P1. Then all the resources the process is currently holding should be preempted. That means these resources which are being holded by the process are implicitly released. And now what are we going to do with these released resources or these preempted resources? These resources are going to be added to the list of resources for which the process is waiting. That means now the process P1 is waiting for the resource R1, R2 and R3, and the process will be restarted only when it is going to have all the three resources, that is the old resources R1 and R2 are regained, as well as the new ones that it is requesting. That means If R3 is not available, then there is no point in holding R1 and R2 by that particular time. The process need to kind of release that. These resources are to be released implicitly, and then now the process has started waiting for the three resources, which is P1, R1, R2 and R3, and it will be restarted only when it is going to regain its all the resources, old as well as new. Now deadlock, when we talk about it, arises due to the fact that a process cannot be stopped once it starts. However, if we are going to take the resources from the process which is causing the deadlock, then we can prevent the deadlock as well. But here is a problem, that if we take a resource away which is being used by the process, then all the work which it has done till now will become inconsistent. That means a process is kind of in mid of some execution or in mid of some processing, and the process the kind of system is going into the deadlock state. Now in order to prevent the deadlock, we are going to we can say stop the process which is causing the deadlock. How are we going to stop the process? The process has to be we can say terminated somehow. In order to terminate that process, or within the we can say process of that termination, the resources will be taken away. Now what will happen when you are going to take away the resources? If we take away the resource which are being used by the process, then all the work which the process has done till this point will become inconsistent. Now here is a problem, and then we can say the protocol is often applied to the resources whose state can be easily saved and restored later. For example, some CPU registers, some memory space. It cannot generally applied to such resources whose states cannot be easily restored, such as printers or tape drives. So that means the protocol which is about the taking the resources away in order to stop the process which is causing the deadlock, and hence prevention of deadlock will happen. We are going to take away the resources, but we have to be very, very careful that in applying this protocol we need to be careful that this protocol will be applied to the resources whose states can be easily saved and restored later, such as some memory space or registers, while it cannot generally be applied to such resources such as printers and tape drivers. So this was about your we can say the no preemption scheme. Now coming to the fourth condition of circular wait. So with the necessary conditions among those four necessary conditions, which are mutual exclusion, hold and wait, no preemption and circular wait, we have seen the three conditions in details, and we have seen the possibility of these three conditions to be implemented. Coming to the fourth condition, which is about the circular wait, we need to ensure that this condition never holds in order to we can say prevent the deadlock. Now what kind of mechanism we are going to implant in order to ensure that the condition of circular wait never holds? That is imposing a total ordering of the resource types, and to require that each process requests the resource is in an increasing order of enumeration. I repeat that a way to ensure that the condition of circular wait never holds is to impose a total ordering of all the resource types, and to require that each process request resources in an increasing order of enumeration. Now what does it mean? Let us try to understand this. This can be done with the help of assigning a priority number to each of the resource. A process cannot request for a lesser priority resource. For example, the process is at priority level 4, then it will not be allowed to request for the resources of the lesser priority, let's say for example priority number 3. This ensures that not a single process can request a resource which is being utilized by some other process, and hence no cycle will be formed. And when there will be no cycle of the processes which are interdependent on each other, we will be able to prevent the condition of circular wait, because circular wait is all about all about the processes waiting in a circle or waiting in an interdependent manner from one process to another, and they are waiting for the resources. So if we can see all the methods which we have seen till this point, all the 4 conditions, you must have kind of sensed by this time that among all the methods, what do we want to do? We actually want to prevent the deadlock. And how are we going to prevent the deadlock? In order to prevent the deadlock, we want to violate those conditions, because those or we can say we need to violate at least one of those conditions, and among those conditions only violating the circular wait is the approach that can be implemented practically. Because if we can see the mutual exclusion, if we can see hold and wait, or if we can see the condition of no preemption, those are the conditions which are, we can say, not very much in our control, and that is we cannot violate those conditions. Only circular wait is the condition which can be violated, and violating circular wait is going to kind of, we can say, is going to help us in prevention of deadlock. So all these 4 conditions practically possible, we can say only circular wait is the one which is practically possible, and here we will assign priority to each of the resources and order the resources numerically. That is something which is in the hand of kind of an application developer, and that can be done. So here till this point, let us try to recap what we have seen. We have seen all the 4 conditions which are necessary for the occurrence of deadlock, and in order to prevent the deadlock, we have seen the deadlock prevention mechanism till this point, and in order to prevent the deadlock, we are going to ensure that at least one of these conditions should not hold. And the most practical approach which is in the hand of application developers is, we can say, circular wait, which can be implemented easily, while others 3 cannot be. Now after this deadlock prevention thing, let us come to a new we can say a subtopic, which is about the deadlock avoidance. In deadlock avoidance, the request for any resource will be granted if the resulting state of the system does not cause deadlock in the system. That means the process is requesting for some resources, and the process will be granted the resources only if, even after granting those resources, the system is not going to enter into the deadlock, because here the scheme is about the deadlock avoidance. We want to avoid the deadlock. We don't want to enter our system into we don't want to allow our system to enter into a deadlock. Now if we can see what could be the possible side effects of preventing deadlocks by this method. If we talk about deadlock avoidance, in which the request will be granted only if it is not triggering the deadlock situation, what are the possible side effects? There can be 2 possible side effects. One is low device utilization, and another one is the reduced system throughput. These are the 2 possible side effects of this particular mechanism, and I hope you understand that low device utilization, because we are not freely giving the request, we are not freely allocating the resources, and when the device utilization is low, obviously the system throughput is going to be affected. Now what do we need to do? We actually need to check at every point of time, we need to check the state of the system. What do we need to check in the state of the system? That it will be checked for the safe and unsafe state. So safe state says that the system is not entering in the deadlock, while the unsafe state is when the system is entering into the deadlock. So at every point of time, the system has to be checked that whether it is in a safe state or whether it is an kind of an unsafe state. And in order to avoid the deadlock, the processes must tell the operating system the maximum number of resource a process can request to complete its execution. So for example, there is a process, let's say P1, which is looking for 3 tape drives, then the operating system must be told that the 3 tape drives will be required for this process P1 to complete its execution. That means the maximum number of resources which a process may need or may ever need at any point of execution, that has to be kind of declared and told to the operating system. And then the deadlock avoidance algorithm will examine the resource allocation so that there can never be a circular wait condition. That means it will check, the deadlock avoidance algorithm will examine the resource allocation, will try to keep a check on, or will try to implement that a circular wait condition should not hold, and in this way the system will be kind of, we can say, stopped from getting into a deadlocked state. So the resource allocation, now how the resource allocation, so when we talk about the safe and unsafe state, we need to monitor the complete state of a system. What complete state I am talking about here? So complete state about the resources, that means the resource allocation state of a system has to be checked. Now what is this resource allocation state of the system? It is defined by the instances of available and allocated resources, maximum instances of the resources demand by the processes also. So that means whatever is available with the system, whatever is being given to the process, and what a process might need in future before in order to complete its execution. This whole resource allocation state must be known by a system, kind of, in order to have keep a check on the deadlock. So basically a process needs to declare the maximum number of resources of each type that it may need. As I have given the example, let's say 3 tape drives, 1 printer, then 3 disk files, and then so on and so forth. So all these resources need to be declared by, along with the type and the number of each, needs to be declared by the process in a prior information. And taking this prior information, it is possible to construct an algorithm that ensures that the system will never enter into a deadlock state. Such an algorithm defines the deadlock avoidance approach. So earlier we have seen deadlock prevention mechanism, in which we want to prevent any of these 4 conditions which are necessary for a deadlock to occur. Now when we talk about deadlock avoidance, in deadlock avoidance approach we need a prior information. That prior information will give us the whole picture about the resource allocation state of the system. This resource allocation state will give us a status of the instances of available and allocated resources, maximum instance of the resources demanded by the process, what is available in the system, what has been assigned to the we can say process, and each process kind of declare in advance that the maximum number of resources that each of each type that it may need. So, with this prior information, we will be constructing an algorithm that ensures that the system will never enter in a deadlock state. So, the deadlock avoidance algorithm is going to examine the resource allocation status of the system in order to ensure that a circular wait condition should not exist, and this is what we are looking for here. So, basically when we will be coining the deadlock avoidance algorithm, we will be looking for the safe state, we will be looking for the unsafe state, and there are other set algorithms which are or other already coined algorithms like Banker's algorithm, which comes under the category of deadlock avoidance technique. So, here in this lecture we have started with kind of the deadlock prevention thing, and after the two conditions we have seen the condition of hold and wait, no preemption and circular wait in detail, so that the deadlock can be prevented. And we also seen that what do you mean by deadlock avoidance situation, how it can be avoided, and what are the we can say algorithms of deadlock avoidance that we will be covering in our upcoming lectures. Thank you for a patient hearing. Hope you have enjoyed the lecture. Here is a list of references which is being used for the preparation of lecture. Thank you.